Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, I'll be reviewing the Rikon variable speed drill press. Well, it's another tool review here on Alternative Tuesdays, and this week I'm going to be focusing on the Rikon 30-212VS 12-inch drill press. Sounds all fancy and everything, but how does this drill press work in the shop, and what can you expect if you end up purchasing one? Well, it wasn't that long ago that I featured the assembly of this drill press on the show, and as well I did the build series on making the drill press table, and of course the modification to move the raising and lowering to the front end of the drill press. But honestly, I haven't said that much on the show about the drill press itself and how I like it. Now you have to remember that everything that I say on today's show is not written in stone. This is just my first impressions of the use that I've had over the past few months. And so far, I like what I'm dealing with. So let's go through a few of the features of the drill press, and we'll talk about what it is that I like or dislike about them. Well, the very first thing that I would like to touch on, only because I know that on the assembly video of the drill press, I said I wasn't a big fan of them and never used them, and that would be the laser crosshairs. Now, I guess the reason I wasn't a fan of them is because at the time, I had never really used one that worked. These guys have done a great job in getting the laser crosshairs to be exactly where they should be. It's bang on the money every time. I've never had to adjust it, although you can if need be. And even if I raise or lower the table, the crosshairs remain where they should be, which is right in the middle of the chuck as the drill comes down through your work. And honestly, this has been more useful to me than I thought it was going to be, as even for setting up the fence of my drill press table, where I can line it up with a mark that's on my work, set the table, and not even have to have a bit installed. I can use the crosshairs to set my fence to get the proper distance on my piece. So, although at first I thought it was kind of a hokey kind of gimmick, I've actually found it quite useful. If the laser option is not for you and you find this distracting, I also like the fact that they've made it that you can just reach up and shut it off. My old drill press, it came on all the time. You had no choice, but of course, these guys aren't ramming this down your throat and causing you to have it all the time. They're giving you an option. So now that I've touched on the laser and the switch and being able to shut it on and off, I wanted to bring up the work light. And again, you get a separate switch to have the choice as to whether or not you want to use it. And I quite like that I can either turn it on or turn it off. Now, how does the work light illuminate the table? Well, let's turn off the filming lights and I'll show you the difference between on and off. Well, drill presses, for me anyway, are notorious for causing massive shadows, and this being a dark gray area where I have problems seeing what I'm drilling. Now, part of that is my personal eyesight, but the other part of it is lack of work lighting on a drill press. And as you may have seen in other videos, on my smaller drill press, I've actually attached a separate work light to illuminate the work area. But what Rikon has done is right up here in the head of the drill press, they've placed an LED work light just at the column. And it does a great job of illuminating this entire area, your whole work area. And it's LED, it's bright white LED, which makes it extremely clear to see. Now, here was my problem. I was afraid that if the work light was on, the laser would not show on your project. And that was a bit of a concern for me, even though it was an option that I didn't really care about. I kind of thought, yeah, okay, that's going to drown that out. But as you can see, that is not the case. Both the work light and the laser actually work really well together, and neither one overpowers the other. So for me, I think the work light is a great addition. I wish they would have added it on their bandsaw, but I'm not the tool designer. But the job that they've done here with the integration of the laser and the work light is A1. Well, the next part of my review brings me to the on-off switch that they have in the front here. And quite honestly, I'm not a big fan of this front housing. I find this to be, it could be a little beefier. I think I'd like to see this a little more sturdy. It's not that big of a deal. It's not a deal breaker. But this switch here, they could have put brackets across here and added a place to put a padlock instead of this foolishness, this remove to lock. I've had other tools that have this, and I hate this. Because let me ask you what happens when you lose this particular piece that's supposed to be in here so that your drill press works. Things get lost in a shop, guys, and to have, I've always thought these were terrible, to have a little mini tiny piece that you could possibly lose as a safety feature just makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. So points lost on that. But however, the switch is sturdy. It does click in really nice. There's no play in it, and these switches as well, there is no play in those. So as far as the controls go, they are rock solid. And that brings me to my next point, which is this LED screen for speed of the drill press. Well, I'll just turn the drill press on and show you here the speed control. Now, this digital readout is actually quite handy for things like Forstner bits where they have their maximum RPM laser engraved right on them. It's very easy to check and see if you're exceeding that maximum. I really like this screen. I've never been a big fan of red LED readouts, so the blue is nice. It's a little easier on the eyes. The letters are large, easy to read, and I actually like this. I use it a lot more than what I thought I would, so there's a plus for me. But we'll move on now that we've looked at this screen to the variable speed control. If you're hoping to dial this thing in exactly, you're not going to get it. It's one of those things where there's a fluctuation due to the way it's controlled, and I understand that. So you can turn this thing down more and more to get the different speeds, but you can see how slowly it goes down. Now, let's just let it level out here, 350. So we're at 350 RPM there, and depending on where you move this lever on the side of the drill press, you change that speed. Now, the speed adjustments are easy. There's no real effort to move this handle. I'm in a very awkward position here due to the camera, but I can still ramp this up if I want with very little effort. So the speed control on the Rikon drill press is very user-friendly. Just don't expect that you'll be able to dial it in to like 327 RPM. That's not going to happen. You can get ballpark. I don't have any way to actually test the rotation of this to see if it is that exact speed, so I have to assume that it's in the ballpark. But There you go, the variable speed of the drill press. It's well designed and it works well. Well, as you probably heard in that last clip, or didn't hear me in that last clip, my next point of this drill press is volume. This drill press is noisy, and I'm not sure why. It's more of a rattling, or the way that it transfers the sound, or projects the sound of the drill. And I think it's a combination of things. I think it's a combination of the housing and the way that's designed. I also think that because of the split gears to make it change variable speeds and that sort of thing, I think they are noisier than what the average drill press is, that would just spin at one speed and have your speed changed by solid gear connections on the belt. This is a little different. So it is a lot noisier than your average drill press. That doesn't bother me. That, again, that's not a deal breaker here. Tools in a shop are noisy. Oh my gosh, don't make any noise in my shop. It doesn't work that way. The way that I see it though is I will be looking at ways that I can possibly dampen this sound. Not that it's brutally crazy loud. It's just not as quiet as what I think a drill press should be, and I think that there are measures of padding or insulation that I can put around the housing that will dampen that sound transfer. So there's a bit of a negative point. Well, while we're on negative points of the drill press, I want to bring up the one that actually surprised me, and I didn't realize it till after I got it home, even though I had played with this machine several times at a store before I actually purchased it. And what it is this upper housing, or upper shroud. What's negative about it, you might be asking? It's plastic. The whole thing is plastic. And within, well, I didn't even really have it together, and this closure here, the knob for the closure, was already broken in shipping because, yeah, you got it, because it's plastic. So this is a major down point for me. For the price of the drill press, I think that this shroud here should have been metal. Every drill press I've ever owned has had a motor and pulley shroud up here that has been metal or steel of some kind. I have never seen a plastic one, not even on the cheapest drill presses in the planet. So honestly, Rikon, you could have done better on that as far as the design goes. I don't know if you were trying to reduce weight, reduce cost, reduce manufacturing. I don't know what you were trying to reduce, but by putting plastic on here, in my mind, you just reduce quality. Now, with that being said about the plastic shroud, I think that's where a large portion of the noise from this drill press comes from. I think that plastic is really vibrating, and as I said, I will be looking for ways to pad it and cool it down on the sound. Well, everybody wants to talk about fit and finish on their reviews, and that's why I add it to mine, because people seem to like that. And I get it, but that's more of an assembly thing for me than what it is a review thing. So fit and finish, I had no problems putting it together. I covered the finished surface here with my own table, but everything else is nice. The cast irons are all milled properly and they look great until you cover them up. And other than that, the column is, everything is good as far as fit and finish goes. I had zero issues there, guys. So we'll just move on from that and talk about our rack and pinion raising and lowering. Now, you already know that I modified mine and placed it to the front. And that, honestly, guys, that was by far the best modification to a drill press that I have ever made. Although the table does sway when you're raising it, well, that's because you haven't tightened it down and it's swinging on the column. It would do that whether you had this on or not. But honestly, the rack and pinion gears on this work beautifully. The way that they operate at the back on the column has absolutely nothing to do with my modification, because it is their gear set that was there initially that I just added to, and their gear set is spot on. The tooth bar at the back that runs up and down the column, that thing meshes beautifully with the gear, and the action to move up and down the column is smooth as glass. Very pleased with how that works, and I think it's 10 times better now with this modification here. Now, why would Rikon not add this to the front as other manufacturers? Why? Because a drill press table is a very personal thing, and once they move their controls to the front, you are stuck with their design of drill press tables. So that I get. So lockdown and raising and lowering is pretty much standard across the board, as all drill presses are, with your normal lockdown and raising methods, but extremely smooth on the Rikon 30-212. Well, aside from the variable speed, I have to say that their depth stops on the Rikon drill press has got to be one of my favorite features. I absolutely love this setup. Finally, a manufacturer has come out and put stop nuts on here that are user-friendly. This scale is actually surprisingly accurate, and I was pleased to see that. When you look at it, the scale actually lines up with a 0 here, so you know the plunge rate. So you're actually able to dial this down to 1/2 inch, and when you get it to 1/2 inch, you can bring your second nut down, just like that. One little simple twist locks them in place, and you just traveled 1/2 inch. It is actually a fantastic system. I really like it. I've also, I don't know, maybe I don't know these new drill presses, but I have never seen one on the bottom that prevents the raising of the quill, so that when you have your drill press down at a certain level, you can lock it in place there for while you're working on it. If you need to get into your chuck area to remove the chuck, instead of trying to hold it down, you can lock it in place and do your work as you wish here at the drill press and not have any problems of having to lose one hand holding it. It's actually a good idea. I've never seen that on a drill press, so kudos to them for thinking of that. But as far as the depth stop here, I love this, and as much as I loved my shop-made one, I like this enough that I'm not going to put a shop-made one on here. So what does that tell you? Because I love my shop-made version. But there you go. This is awesome. Well, I now want to touch on or talk about these controls here. And I can say that for what Rikon skipped on this housing, or skimped on, they put it in the extra beefiness of these handles. And they are rock solid. I really love the way that they feel when you're using the drill press. They feel solid. They don't wiggle. They're not loose. They have not come loose since I installed them. They are just a very solid unit. I'm very happy with how they work. So they've done a great job with this. Also, with the chuck key holder, I know that at first I had said on the assembly show that, yeah, it's just a hokey little plastic bracket, but at least they've thought of somewhere for us to put that drill press key. And it's actually 10 times more useful than I thought it was. And I love the fact that the chuck key always has a home. I've never had to look for it. Luckily for me, with my old setup, I used a magnet pretty much in the same location, just a little behind. So it's force of habit for me to reach here to get the key. But it snaps in solid. It's in there nice and clean, no worries, and you don't end up losing it. Well, we've talked about some of the features and what I like or don't like about them. Let's talk about the performance or the power of the drill press. Now, this model is equipped with a 3/4 horsepower, 120 volt motor. It is not convertible to 240 as some of their other tools are, so don't even think you can do that. The 3/4 horse motor is more than sufficient for a drill press. How much power do you need to drill a hole? The drill bit does the work. The drill just spins it. You start to think about that. If your drill bit is crap, then the drill press is going to have to work harder. So that 3/4 motor, may or may not be good enough at that point, but it's not the drill's fault, it's the drill bit's fault. So 3/4 horsepower, plenty of guts to be able to do what you want, and it seems solid. The mounting is solid, everything seems solid about this drill press except for the housing. But now, one issue that never even crossed my mind when I purchased this, but it has become an issue for me having a shop that is only visited on the weekends in the winter and no heat. So you come out here and I have to light the wood stove and wait for the heat. And I tried one day to drill a hole because I was working on a project while waiting for the heat to come up. Now, this drill press has one heck of a beefy belt. The belt is massive in this thing, and that is because of the variable speed. It has those plates that it separates and pulls apart, and as those plates pull apart, they're tapered, and that taper increases or decreases the spindle speed, which in turn increases or decreases the speed of the chuck. That beefy belt really holds the cold, and when it holds the cold, it holds its shape. You see where I'm going with this? The drill press won't run. You turn it on and the belt is partially frozen there and it doesn't want to turn. So you have to wait for it to warm up a little bit and then she'll finally go and soften up. But it was something that I didn't think about. I'm not going to complain about it because it's a beefy belt. I mean, that belt will probably outlast me. But it does have that issue that it cannot be used in the cold weather. No big deal. I have another drill press, but if this is your main drill press and you're putting it in a garage, say, that's never heated, if you're in a cooler region, you may want to think about that. And there you have it. The review of the Rikon 30-212VS 12-inch drill press. Guys, out of 10, what would I give it? I'm going to say 7.5. And where did it lose points? Well, noise level, it lost points on. But the big one for me that I just can't let go is that plastic shroud at the top. I'm still bothered that the piece was snapped on shipping. I may even contact Rikon and see if maybe they can do something about it. We'll see. Is it a quality drill press, I guess is what we have to ask ourselves here. And I would say yes. At this point, from the amount that I've used it and from what I can see and how it feels as you're using it, it is a high quality drill press and it feels great. It does a great job. It doesn't stall out. That variable speed is slick and it's smooth as heck. It's just not able to be dialed in. A rheostat may have been another way to control the speed electronically, but then of course that creates other issues as well. So the way they've done it is actually very acceptable for the drill press, and I think it works well. The output as far as the display for the speed, like I said, it's A1. I don't like the safety lock on the switch, but the switches are solid. But that plastic housing, guys, I have a hard time with that. Again, it's not a deal breaker because how much abuse does that housing take? And with the variable speed controls being on the outside, it's not like one of the ones where you have to change the belt. You're not always accessing in and out, in and out, in and out. You're hardly ever in there. And in fact, the only time you'll be in there is if you should break a belt. And the size of that speed belt, I think that's going to take a while. Guys, I love this drill press. Honestly, I do. It works well, it's powerful, it's compact, and there is plenty of room on it to do what I want to do. The operation is smooth, the finish is fantastic. I think it's a good looking tool, which sometimes can be important in the shop too. You don't want ugly tools hanging around like me. Guys, I want to thank you so much for joining me this week. I hope that if you've been looking for videos on Rikon tools that you were able to find this one, as there really aren't that many out there at the moment, and that's part of the reason why I'm bringing this to you today, so that anyone who is searching for them like what I was will have something to view. I really want to thank you for tuning in this week, guys. Please click the like and the subscribe button as well as the bell so you get notifications of future episodes. And I hope you're going to join me next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.